When it comes to video games and their impact on my life, I don't think I exaggerate in saying the most long-term impact they've had over the decades I've played is the fantastic music I've heard from many talented composers. Even as a kid, hours after enjoying old-fashioned analog consoles on a dusty CRT TV, the songs would just play in my head over and over again. It was a bit of something I could keep with me, and filled me with anticipation for the next time I could hear those songs again. As this newer channel is going to spend a lot of time on the topic of game music, I wanted to take some time to talk in depth about my 7 favorite game composers, the impact they've had in the game industry, and in my own life as well. As I grow older and have fleetingly less and less time to even sit down and play video games, the one aspect about them that I've been able to keep with me in my day-to-day life are the incredible tunes I've listened to over the years. Every day as I'm working my desk job at home, these tracks help me keep a grasp on my sanity and make the daily slog of earning a living just a little more bearable. The 7 composers I'll talk about are ones that have made the biggest impact on my life personally, with some that will probably be among your favorites as well. And so, without further ado, let's begin the countdown. Number 7. Robin Beanland, a veteran from the golden age of Rare that continues working there to this day. Beginning work at Rare in the early 90s, he started with composing most of the music for the arcade fighter Killer Instinct. Coincidentally, he also took a track from a promo for the game that was used as Funky's Fugue in Donkey Kong Country. I think it's very memorable for its famous Hi-ya! For me though, where he truly became a legend is his contributions to the N64 library, especially the third-person shooter Jet Force Gemini. Beforehand to me, video game music always had that distinct synthesized video gamey sound, but from the moment Jet Force Gemini is turned on, I knew this was something different. I don't know how he pulled it off, but Jet Force Gemini was the closest I've heard synthesized samples to sounding like a real orchestra. It added so much to the immersion of the world, and I still listen to it on occasion to this day. One fun fact about the game's soundtrack is that the title theme was pulled from Conker's 12 Tales, the original beta version of what eventually became Conker's Bad Fur Day, which he also composed for. I mentioned this on Twitter, and the real Beano himself mentioned how he thought it was a much better fit. There isn't much of his career after the N64 days that I've kept much track of, but he did also contribute a good number of tracks to Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, including the Jiggylookback theme. Overall, Robin's had a fantastic career at Rare, most recently writing for their current mega-hit, Sea of Thieves. Sadly, we won't get to see his work on the recently cancelled Everwild, but Robin remains a pioneer in evolving the possibilities of video game music. Number 6. Mahito Yokota. While Mario and Zelda composer Koji Kondo, more on him later, did establish the musical foundations of those franchises, it is Mahito Yokota who helped bring those franchises into the orchestral age. But before then, Mahito Yokota's first job for Nintendo was writing music for the underappreciated Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, a GameCube title that famously used bongos as controls. You probably have heard the track Battle for Storm Hill in Super Smash Bros. In E3 2005, Yokota composed a fully orchestrated trailer theme for The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. It was unfortunate this wasn't done in-game, as it would have done a lot to add to the game's epic feel. But he would get a chance to later, which we'll get to in a bit. But first, we need to talk about his greatest work. The music of Super Mario Galaxy in 2007 and its sequel in 2010 showed just how much live instrumentation could add to the Mario experience, especially in the grand scale of space. Composing and arranging the vast majority of the tracks for both of these games, Yokota cemented himself as one of the greats, with iconic tunes like Gusty Garden Galaxy, Buoy Base Galaxy, plus many other amazing tracks that'd be too long to mention here. As I mentioned, he also did get to bring orchestral music to the Zelda series with Skyward Sword. Say what you will about the game in general, the music is some of the strongest in the series. Flying in the clouds of Skyloft is always a thrill, in large part because of the John Williams-like score, and makes exploring a bit more fun. Among other things, I think the music is a great reason to still play the game. Yokota also wrote the extremely catchy theme song for Super Mario 3D World. This was a little different from his previous work in that it was more in the classic Mario style. With all this and more, Mahito Yokota has proved himself a worthy successor to the legacy of Koji Kondo. Number 5. Nobuo Uematsu. I mentioned how Mahito Yokota ushered in the orchestral age for Nintendo, but Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu brought the feel of classical music to video games years before live instruments were possible. Being the sole composer of the first 9 Final Fantasy games, Uematsu brought the stylings of Bach and Beethoven to complement the game's more intrinsic storytelling. I think the main Final Fantasy theme would be much better for graduations than Pomp and Circumstance. As the stories and technology grew in complexity, so did the music. Starting in the SNES era, his music truly began to soar. Final Fantasy VI is arguably the highlight of his career, ranging from the iconic Draco and Maria opera to the epic 4-part final boss theme, Dancing Mad. The PlayStation era allowed even more tools for his disposal. Final Fantasy VII had one of the most cinematic video game stories to date, and the music complemented each emotional moment so well. And classics like One Wing Angel are played in concerts to this day. Fun fact, I actually first heard One Wing Angel when fighting Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts, and then I eventually went on to play the classic RPG it came from. Uematsu was also called in to compose the theme song for Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I've barely scratched the surface of his works, but Uematsu has definitely well deserved the title as the Beethoven of video games. Number 4. Yoko Shimamura. In the summer of 1996, I had my first experience with the role-playing game genre with Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. I love the turn-based battles with the time hits gimmick. The characters are memorable and hilarious, and the storyline is whimsical and, dare I say, even Disney-like. But a huge part of the game's magical charm was the soundtrack by Yoko Shimamura. Fusing together the feel of the Final Fantasy and Mario universes, Yoko forever established the tone of Mario RPGs moving ahead, going on to compose for each game in the Mario and Luigi series. I haven't played a lot of that series, but Bowser's Inside Story has an amazing OST, with In the Final being one of the best boss themes I've ever listened to. We also can't of course talk about Yoko's work without mentioning the juggernaut of Kingdom Hearts. From the very moment I first turned on Kingdom Hearts and heard the calm piano chimes of Dearly Beloved, I knew I was in for something special. Shimamura's whimsical style was a match made in heaven for the Final Fantasy Disney crossover, and I loved how the music, much like the theme of the game itself, was genuinely heartfelt. And I'm sure that her upcoming work for Kingdom Hearts 4 will be superb as always. More recently, Yoko has helped arrange music for the Super Smash Bros. Series, including Banjo-Kazooie's Treasure Trove Cove. There are sadly not many well-known composers of the female persuasion, but Yoko Shimamura has easily earned her place among the greatest of all time. Number 3. David Wise. Beginning work at Rare in 1985, David Wise composed tunes for dozens of NES titles, including the charming Snake Rattle and Roll. I think that the very first time I heard David Wise's music was actually the Sesame Street ABC game. When Rare was given the golden opportunity to make Donkey Kong's first adventure, Wise gave Donkey Kong Country a soundtrack unlike any we've ever heard before in a video game. Featuring the ambient sounds of the jungle and killer percussion, the music added to a complete sense of immersion in the game that well complements the pre-rendered graphics. One of my favorite videos is a sketch of a Rare employee listening to aquatic ambience, welling with emotion and saying,
"He knows this is for a video game, right?"
Like so many others on this list, David Wise helped expand the art of game music to something well beyond just for video games themselves. In the sequel, Diddy's Conquest, David Wise took it even further, creating a soundtrack many believe to be the absolute pinnacle of his career. Iconic tracks like Sticker Brush Symphony, Forest Interlude, and In a Snowbound Land create a vibe that can only be described as spiritually atmospheric. It makes you feel like you're there, and again complements the visuals perfectly. Wait a second. After editing this, I realized it was actually Evelyn Novakovic who wrote In a Snowbound Land, as well as about half the original Donkey Kong Country soundtrack and almost all of Donkey Kong Country 3. She seems a bit unrecognized, so I think I'm going to cover more about her in the future. David would go on to compose a few more games for Rare, including Diddy Kong Racing, Star Fox Adventures. Nintendo, please re-release this game so more people can hear this fantastic music.
There's also the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country 3. He eventually would leave Rare in 2009, but made an amazing return to the Donkey Kong series with Tropical Freeze. What I love about his work here is that while his distinct style is unchanged, the inclusion of live instruments in the mix added even more to the immersive ambience. For levels like Sawmill Thrill, for example, the music dynamically changes as the level does. After nearly a decade of being away from the series, the music made me feel like I was reuniting with an old friend. David Wise is easily one of the most creative composers in the industry, and I still love listening to his amazing work. Number 2. Grant Kirkhope. The third Rare composer on this list, this beloved giant in the gaming world would probably be my number 1 if I were going purely off personal bias, because he's not only a fantastic composer, but a wonderful human being.
So I go now he's finally here. Come on. Performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together. If you want to clap as we take you through this monkey rap.
Along with some talented cohorts, Grant Kirkhope began work at Rare in the mid-90s, his first assignment adapting David Wise's Donkey Kong Country 2 soundtrack for the Game Boy title Donkey Kong Land 2. Things moved quickly into the N64 era, with Kirkhope composing a number of iconic tracks for the genre-defining FPS GoldenEye 007. It's really easy to get stuck listening to the Watch menu theme. Grant was also working on Project Dream, a game about a sword-wielding protagonist fighting against the evil Captain Black-Eye. This game would eventually change and evolve into Banjo-Kazooie. This easily became the defining game of his entire career. What I love about the music of this game is how it dynamically shifts into different stylings depending on your location, like when you dive underwater. Gruntilda's lair has 11 different variations, changing whenever you get near a new world to explore. In the sequel, Banjo-Tooie, Grant would carry over the same stylings, although with a generally darker tone. There are a lot of great tunes here, but the absolute standout has to be Atlantis. You really feel the grandeur of exploring this ancient city deep in the lagoon. Now, Grant Kirkhope will probably always be best known for Banjo-Kazooie, but I think you can make the argument that Donkey Kong 64 is even better, starting with the hilariously catchy DK rap. The music of Donkey Kong 64 is to be more than just good video game music. It has such a distinctly calming vibe to it. I really can't count the number of times that I felt down, and the soothing melody of Donkey Kong Island pulled me right out of it. There are a number of other great songs in the game as well, including another one of my all-time favorites, The Mermaid's Palace. If I were to describe the magic of nostalgia with a piece of music, this would definitely be it. The music just captures that sense of childlike wonder as you explore and discover the world around you, a time when you didn't have to worry about the things your parents did. And that is a good feeling, even if just for a moment. Now, skipping ahead a few years after the Microsoft purchase, when Rare moved into the HD era, Kirkhope finally had the full disposal of a live orchestra to bring his music to life, starting with Viva Pinata, and then eventually its sequel, Trouble in Paradise. I love the pastoral feel of the music, as you build and grow your garden of adorable pinata creatures. Oven Baked Day is one of my favorites because Grant apparently came up with a tune over a decade earlier when Banjo-Kazooie was still Project Dream. There is one track in this game that I can only describe as a tear-jerking masterpiece, which is Bedtime Story. At the time of composing the tune, Grant had made the decision that he would be leaving Rare. He said, "I poured all my heartache into that tune. I knew I was going to be leaving Rare at that point, and it was so upsetting I really can't describe it. That piece was my goodbye to somewhere I thought I'd never want to leave." I should of course mention another game he composed for around the time, which was Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Although I have plenty of qualms about the game itself, it was an absolute delight to hear both classic and new Banjo-Kazooie tunes with that rich orchestral sound. Since leaving Rare, Grant has worked as a freelance composer. A few highlights include the Playtonic Games Kickstarter project, Ukulele, a fun little callback to the Banjo-Kazooie days.
He also got the amazing opportunity to compose for the Mario universe in Mario & Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and its recent sequel, Sparks of Hope. Both these games have amazing soundtracks, and Yoko Shimomura also contributed to the music of Sparks of Hope as well, and it's fantastic.
To wrap things up with him, we do have to talk about this moment.
Let's see. Banjo, Kazooie, we're home.
Grant Kirkhope is in so many ways the face of the Banjo-Kazooie series, and it was so great he had that opportunity to arrange Spiral Mountain for Smash. I truly hope that someday he'll be given the opportunity to return to these beloved characters once again. I've spent a lot of time gushing on the spot at the countdown, but there is still one composer that I think many will agree is more influential and important than...
So this is it, huh? Your list?
Jiggylookback, what are you doing here?
How can you have a list like this and not include the legendary Kazumi Totaka? Totaka has been a composer for Nintendo games since the beginning. I first discovered him when sitting on a menu in Luigi's Mansion and a mysterious tune started playing. I was like, what the heck is this? Then after looking into it, finding out it was Totaka's song, an Easter egg melody he puts secretly into a lot, if not all the games he works on. And there's a big list. The song's composed of 19 notes. I think it's worth adding him to this list given his history, quantity of games, and having such a cool idea implemented since forever within Nintendo. He truly is a gem of gaming history. And if you needed any further reasons to add him to this list, he is KK Slider from Animal Crossing. As a fun treat, all the viewers should go look up the list of games he worked on and see if you can find Totaka's song in one of your copies of the game. Jiggy out!
Big shout out to Jiggylookback. Be sure to go ahead and check out this channel. I'll leave a link in the description. He does a lot of great retro content, including N64, Dreamcast, analysis, and also shorts types videos. Be sure to go ahead and check him out, and without further ado, let's see the number one choice. Number 1. Koji Kondo. Growing up with a love of arcade games like Space Invaders and Donkey Kong, Koji Kondo began gravitating toward video game music, and even began working with a piano and a computer program to write music for the Famicom, or the NES here in the States, even writing part of the manual for how to program it. In 1984, Koji Kondo began work at Nintendo after responding to a recruiting advertisement, where his first assignment was the sound design for the arcade game Punch-Out! In 1985, Nintendo began marketing the Famicom as a Nintendo Entertainment System in America, and they needed a killer app, which was the one and only Super Mario Bros. Became a worldwide phenomenon, and the overall theme composed by Koji Kondo is probably the most recognizable piece of video game music in history. Part of the reason it works so well is Kondo's philosophy of writing a short, repeating, catchy tune that you wouldn't mind listening to over and over and over again. Koji also wrote memorable looping tunes for Super Mario Bros. 2, and then incorporated percussion-type samples into Super Mario Bros. 3. Koji Kondo would carry the same philosophy over to the genesis of another important series. The Legend of Zelda has a triumphant theme for the overworld that truly captures the spirit of adventure. The Labyrinth theme is also very short, but perfectly encapsulates the danger you feel in these dungeons. When Mario moved into the 16-bit era, Koji Kondo took his simplistic approach even further for Super Mario World. The soundtrack is mostly variations of the same theme. The way he was able to successfully do this without it feeling repetitive is a pretty remarkable achievement. For the next Legend of Zelda, however, Kondo created his most ambitious soundtrack yet. A Link to the Past, more than any other game in the series, established the melodic tone of the games moving forward. Many long reoccurring themes had their start here, like the Fairy Fountain, Zelda's Lullaby, Kakariko Village, and even Ganon's theme. The first Zelda game I actually ever played was Ocarina of Time, and I was surprised just how many tunes carried over from A Link to the Past when I eventually played that game. Add in some other iconic tracks like the Dark World theme, and you have an all-time classic original soundtrack. When Mario made the jump into 3D, Koji Kondo was right there along with it. Super Mario 64 brought a whole slew of classic melodies, like Peach's Castle, Slider, and Bob-omb Battlefield. My favorite track in the game, however, is easily Dire Dire Docks.
I find it a bit ironic that a level that filled me with such pure existential dread from that blasted eel had such a calm, soothing melody to go with it. Maybe it helped give me the courage to take the plunge. Kondo also musically guided the Legend of Zelda series into 3D, with a magical ocarina at the center of its story. I don't think I exaggerate in saying that Ocarina of Time has the best incorporation of music in the storytelling of a video game. You can feel the beats of the story with every single track. From the grandness of Hyrule Field to the incomparable earworm, Soraya's Song. And even the absolutely bizarre and surreal, like the Forest Temple music. Like with Grand Kirkhope and Banjo-Tooie, Koji Kondo got to write music for a new Zelda sequel just 2 years later. The music of Majora's Mask is surreal, somber, sometimes terrifying, and filled with emotion. The Astral Observatory theme can only be described as magical, with an out-of-this-world feel that's completely unique. I'll never forget the first time I played the Song of Healing for the mummified dad in Ikana Canyon and the emotional scene that followed. Young 13-year-old me actually started tearing up a bit. Majora's Mask is a masterpiece, in large part because of the strong emotion of the music. Collectively, I think these two N64 games are the absolute pinnacle of Kondo's career. Since the start of the GameCube days, Kondo has taken more of a supervisory role with the music of Mario and Zelda, leaving it more and more to other composers like the before-mentioned Mahito Yokota, but still has time and time again composed some of the most important recurring melodies, like the Delfino Island theme in Super Mario Sunshine. Also, with Super Mario Galaxy, he wrote the theme for Rosalina's Observatory. And in the sequel, the theme for Starship Mario. Time and time again, Koji Kondo has proven himself to be the master of unforgettable melody. In conclusion, the music of video games is arguably even more fused into my core being than the actual gameplay experiences. Even though I've gone well past the days of carefree play as a kid, I'm happy the music has stuck with me. Thank you again all so much for watching, and please consider liking this video and subscribing. Until next time, stay chill and be well.